Have you ever noticed that every time you hit a new level in your life, whether that's career, business, energy, relationships, confidence, it's never because of one big moment. It's always because there was a period where you showed up differently. A stretch of time where something shifted in your discipline, in your self image, in the way that you show up. There's a reason for that. There is an energetic pattern behind transformation and a specific number of days to commit to in order to see a real transformation. And we will be talking about that today. So, according to ancient traditions, across spiritual lineages, and even in modern behavioral psychology, 40 days is recognized as a window where deep internal change actually sticks, where the person you're becoming starts to override the patterns that you have been repeating, where daily intention compounds so powerfully that your frequency cannot help but rise and stabilize at a higher place. And that is exactly what we are going to be talking about today. What happens when you devote yourself to opening your heart and elevating your energy and your frequency every single day for 40 days? And if you have been listening to this podcast for the last few weeks, you will know that I have been devoting myself to a 40-day energetic vortex. And actually, as I am recording this episode, I am on day 40 out of 40. And the things that have happened over the last 40 days have been insane. I talked about some of them in the previous episode, so you can go back and listen. And so much more has happened since. But I don't want to make this episode about me. So I'll just tell you quickly, I have been gifted 2 sessions worth thousands of dollars by mentors without even applying for anything or entering any giveaways. I had my second highest cash month in business ever, and my highest cash month in this new business that I started in, I think in around March or April this year is when I fully pivoted into this business that surrounds intuition, manifestation, and reality creation. I also lost 3 kilograms without even trying. So I was holding a bit of extra weight before after traveling for every single month, basically for 6 months straight. I lost 3 kilos without changing anything to my diet or to my exercise. My visibility in my business has been up like crazy. If before these 40 days I was losing followers constantly on Instagram, my podcast was rarely reaching new ears or new views for people on YouTube, what's been happening over the last 40 days has been insane. So many new dream people are following me, finding my podcast, messaging me that this podcast is changing their lives. New clients have been coming in the door. Crazy things, quote unquote miracles, have been happening because I have been raising my frequency. So it is impossible not to transform when you commit to 40 days of raising your frequency. We will be talking today about why that is, why 40 days holds such a specific energetic signature that is connected to purification, to clarity, to new beginnings. And we'll also be talking about how this number shows up again and again in Kabbalah, in other ancient wisdoms, and also in modern psychology. We're about to step into this work together very soon. But today, I want you to first understand why 40 days is the container where real transformation becomes inevitable. So let's dive in. So let's start with the simplest part, the part that most people overlook. What actually happens when you show up every single day for a specific number of days with intention? Whether it is meditating, breath work, gratitude, prayer, manifestation practices, or simply just sitting with yourself for 5 conscious minutes every single day, daily devotion does something that people massively underestimate. It stabilizes your energy. When you show up for yourself every single day, even in small ways, your system starts to register that there is stability and predictability in your life. And when we do that, essentially, we are telling our nervous system that we are safe in this new reality. Safety comes from consistency and from familiarity. It comes from knowing that you are not abandoning yourself, that you are not constantly swinging between extremes, between different moods, between being all in one day and then like being overwhelmed the next day, and that you're actually building a rhythm that your mind, your body, and your system can rely on. So, as I just talked about, most people live in these patterns of chaos, being all in, devoted one day, and then overwhelmed, avoiding themselves for a week, and then they try again. I see that a lot with people who are so desperate to be successful, to get to their next level, and they think they are all in, but really what they do is they go all in and then they go all out, and then they go all in and then they go all out again. That kind of inconsistency keeps the nervous system on edge because nothing feels grounded or reliable or safe. And then no wonder your manifestation, your next level, doesn't come. Because what I want you to understand is energy responds to repetition. When you hold a frequency long enough, when you don't waver, that stabilizes and that becomes your reality. And that's for good or for bad. So many people who might feel stuck, might feel like they're seeing their next level, but it's just not coming. That is because they actually repeat a frequency of not being there yet. Maybe that is a desperate frequency. Maybe that is a lack frequency. Maybe that is a frequency of I don't deserve it. Whatever that is, but when you hold that frequency long enough, that becomes your reality. So if we look at that, we know that if we just tune into another frequency for long enough, and that long enough, hint, is only 40 days. You don't need to do it for more than 40 days. That is when you can stabilize in a whole new frequency. So when you don't waver, when you keep coming back to that higher frequency, which we have been talking about on this podcast, is the frequency of love. That is the frequency that turns thoughts into matter, that causes manifestation to happen. When you keep coming back to this frequency every single day, even on the days that it feels far away, that is when that energy and that frequency locks in your system. You start to emit coherence, which is something that we talked about as well a few episodes ago. And that coherence magnetizes everything that is aligned with it. Another thing that I want you to think about is when you commit to a practice for 40 days, you show up for yourself. You show yourself and your system that it is safe. You begin to have huge trust in yourself. And listen, it is not easy. As I told you, today I'm on day 40 out of 40, and it has been fun. It has been great. I'm almost sad to let it go, but that doesn't mean that it has been easy committing to a practice every single day, a practice that some days took me 30 minutes, some days took me an hour, not all in one not in one chunk, right? Like it could be spread out, but still that requires devotion and that requires commitment. But what happens when you commit to something like this for 40 days? You begin to trust yourself. And then what happens? We have been talking a lot on this podcast about our creator field, or as known in science, our electromagnetic field. What is that? That is the field that holds all of our thoughts, all of our beliefs, all of our intentions, all of our behaviors, mainly the subconscious ones. So when we commit to a practice for 40 days and we start trusting ourselves, rewrite the script in our creator field that we are a person who is worthy of trust. And then what happens? That's what we broadcast outwards. And the people around us, they always have to act out the script in our creator field. So that means that they start trusting us as well. They start seeing us as this person who is fully committed. And then what does that do? Well, if you're a business owner, that means that dream clients will see you as the person for them. They will trust you because you are now emitting this frequency of trust. If you are manifesting deep relationships, friendships, those people, the dream spouse, dream partner, the dream friends, the dream social circle, will start trusting you because you are trusting yourself. And this applies to any area of life. When you trust yourself, the universe begins trusting you. The creator, God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, begins trusting you. And then it sends you all of those things that you are wishing for, that you are waiting for, and that you are working towards. Your emotional state also becomes less reactive when you trust yourself more. Your inner world becomes more spacious. There's more space for your manifestation to come in, and you begin to feel more connected to yourself without having to try, quote unquote. And that is what I love the most about energetic vortexes. This has not been the first time that I have done this. This was the first time that I've done it very intentionally according to Kabbalistic principles, which we'll talk about today. But this is not the first vortex that I have committed myself to. If you are an avid listener of this podcast, you might remember that I think it was around April, I actually committed myself to 30 days of manifestation, a manifestation vortex, and beautiful things happened. And long before I even had this business, I did two 40-day energetic vortexes. I think I was like, it must have been 6 or 7 years ago. And every single time, beautiful freaking things happen. And every single time, what happened is I created more space internally to let all of those things come in. And then the things that I wanted, and even the things that I didn't know I wanted, right? Like, as I told you, I won 2 sessions. I didn't even think it wasn't even my field. Well, I guess it was subconsciously, but it wasn't in my conscious field. Like, oh, I wish like I could have a session with that person, because at that point in time, it was outside of my price range. So having just 2 sessions is absolutely incredible. And then smaller things. I've been given 2 free Pokeballs from my favorite sushi place in the last 2 weeks. How fun. I haven't even been trying. It's not something that I've been asking for. But when you create space internally, those things just find you, right? The universe surprises you. Now, the reason repetition is so powerful is because your energy doesn't reset every day. It builds. Every small act of devotion layers onto the next. And after a while, it stops being something that you do and it starts just becoming the way that you move. And that's the part that people really massively underestimate. Identity and frequency don't change in one breakthrough moment. They change through the daily signals that you send to your mind, to your body, to the creator field, to the universe. And that's why a 40-day container is so transformative. You're giving yourself enough time for your system to actually adjust to a new baseline instead of snapping back into old patterns the moment that life gets busy, chaotic, or you just don't feel like it. By the time you reach day 40, the way you think, the way you feel and hold yourself is not forced. It's familiar and it is your new normal. So let's talk about the number 40 for a moment, because this is a number that keeps showing up across different cultures, spiritual systems, historical stories, and there is a reason for that. And what's interesting is those traditions were not necessarily always influencing each other. They were not always connected, but they all landed on the same pattern. 40 is a turning point. Now, before I get into the examples, I want to briefly touch on Kabbalah, because a lot of my understanding of energetic patterns, energetic vortex, comes from there. So Kabbalah, for those of you who don't know, is the most ancient of spiritual wisdoms, and it is rooted in Jewish mysticism. However, you do not need to be religious or Jewish to be learning or practicing Kabbalah. One person who is very famous, you probably thought of her name when you heard Kabbalah, is Madonna. She's been learning it and preaching it for years. So when you go back to history, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Carl Jung, they all studied Kabbalah. And so much of the world's religion, spirituality, and philosophy is built around the wisdom of Kabbalah, and also a lot of modern science and psychology. While it doesn't refer explicitly to Kabbalah, as someone who has studied both, I can see so many parallels. And of course, Kabbalah has been around long before psychology and modern science. And this just shows how reliable it is. So in the context of a 40-day energetic vortex, I am referring to Kabbalah as a system for understanding energy, consciousness, and creation. It's essentially a map of how transformation happens internally before it becomes visible externally. And one of the ways that it teaches these concepts is through numbers, letters, and the energetic codes behind them. So in Kabbalah, the number 40 actually translates to a Hebrew letter mem, which actually represents water. Okay, so it represents a process of cleansing, of recalibration. So this is the phase where the old dissolves and the new starts to form. It's the energy of transition. It's the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And once you start noticing it, you will see this number literally everywhere. When you think about the flood narrative in the Bible, the rain lasted 40 days, which symbolizes a clearing of what no longer served before a new world emerged. Moses spent 40 days on Mount Sinai in deep spiritual preparation before returning with revelation. The Israelites traveled for 40 years, a long process of dismantling one identity, the identity of slaves, before stepping into another identity of free people. And as I said, it is not limited to one religion or one tradition. In Christianity, Jesus fasted for 40 days before stepping into his purpose. In Islam, the Prophet Muhammad spent 40 days in retreat before receiving revelation. In nature, think about nature. It takes the human body about 40 weeks to form an entirely new human life, right? Pregnancy, a healthy full-term pregnancy, lasts 40 weeks. So regardless of the tradition or story, the pattern is the same. 40 marks a turning point. It's the window where something is being purified, reshaped, refined, or prepared. And what I find beautiful as someone who's both deeply spiritual and has a PhD and has been researching human potential for over a decade is that this actually aligns with what we know from an energetic standpoint and even from behavioral psychology. 40 days is long enough to break old patterns, stabilize new ones, and reach a point where the change can sustain itself. And this is proven in behavioral psychology as well. Your nervous system can adapt throughout 40 days, your emotions regulate, your identity starts to shift into something that no longer feels forced, it feels natural. So when you commit to 40 days of elevating your energy, of opening your heart, you are essentially stepping into a transformational timeline that has been recognized for thousands of years as the period where deep internal shifts actually take place and take root. And that's why 40 days feels different and it has this power. It is structural. It's part of the architecture of how change works. And when you move in alignment with that architecture, instead of fighting your own patterns or hoping for sudden overnight change, everything becomes smoother. The breakthroughs become more consistent. The resistance drops and your energy stabilizes in a way that makes growth actually sustainable. So now that we've grounded and understood the power of 40 days and the number 40, I want to talk a bit about how this links to manifestation from a Kabbalistic perspective, because this is where the whole picture really comes together. When people hear the word manifestation, they often think of visualizing something or hoping for something and just hoping it arrives. But in Kabbalistic teachings, manifestation has nothing to do with forcing outcomes or even just trying to control the external world in any way. It is a lot more about how energy flows and more specifically how it flows through you. And this is why when I commit to 40-day energetic vortexes, I never set the intention of manifesting anything specific. And as you know, I am a manifestation coach. I believe in the power to create things in our reality, to co-create with source. But when it comes to raising your frequency, I believe setting a specific intention is kind of missing the point. Because as I said before, you are missing out on opportunities for the universe, for God to surprise you, to give you things you didn't even know you wanted or needed, to give you things that maybe you didn't even think you could manifest. When you don't set an intention, and you just let energy flow through you for 40 days, that is when you receive the most beautiful things. So in the system of Kabbalah, everything that exists starts as energy or potential before it becomes physical. There's a whole structure for how that energy moves down through different layers of consciousness until it eventually becomes something tangible. And the idea that every idea, every opportunity, every version begins as pure potential and pure energy also correlates with the science of quantum physics, which proves that everything at the deepest level is made up of energy. So in Kabbalah, before anything becomes physical, it moves through a structure called the 10 emanations. Now, I'm not going to go through each of them because honestly, we could have a whole course just about each one of the 10 emanations. This is a very, very spiritual high frequency concept, but I want you to think of them as 10 stages that energy flows through from the highest spiritual level down into the physical world. If you are familiar with the chakras, which we have talked about in this podcast before, it is kind of similar, right? We start from the crown chakra, which is very highly spiritual, all the way down to the root chakra, which is rooted in the physical world. So manifestation in that sense is the process of allowing something that already exists in potential, in energy, to move into form through 10 stages without blocking it. What I want you to understand is it's actually incredibly practical. The idea is that manifestation is not a single moment, it is a process. Energy moves step by step from intention to emotion to thought to action and eventually into reality. But the part that most people miss is if your internal system, your energy, your emotions, your beliefs is blocked at any point along that journey, along the way, that is where the flow stops. And that is why the potential never fully makes it into physical form. Now, in Kabbalah, the internal system is actually called the vessel. We see each and every person as a vessel. And that is why Kabbalah focuses on the concept of vessel so much, because if the vessel is not pure and not clear, manifestation cannot become form. But when you become a fully clear vessel, your inner world is then able to hold what you are calling in. Now, if there's contraction, fear, worry, chaos, inconsistency, or dysregulation in your system, then even if the potential is available, and the potential is always available for manifestation, you cannot actually receive it. It's like trying to pour water into a cracked cup. And again, this brings us back to the idea of 40 days and why 40 days are so powerful, because 40 days gives you enough time to refine the vessel, to regulate your emotions, to open your heart, to clear old patterns, to actually upgrade the internal architecture that the energy flows through so it could flow through smoothly. When you devote yourself to a daily practice for 40 days, you are clearing blockages at all the subtle levels that those 10 emanations represent, from intention to clarity to action to embodiment. And side note, when I say intention, that doesn't need to be, as I said, intending to manifest something specific. It's more of an intention for the person that you are becoming. When you are devoting yourself to a daily practice for 40 days, you are making it easier for energy to move all the way down into physical reality without getting stuck along the way. And that is why manifestation and living this reality of being God's favorite starts feeling easier when you do this work. It is because you are no longer blocking the flow. You're no longer trying to manifest from contraction, from scarcity, from fear, from worry, from lack. Instead, your energy becomes so open, so receptive, regulated, consistent, which is the exact state where things move quickly, where energy moves quickly from intention to form with less resistance. So, from a Kabbalistic manifestation perspective, a 40-day practice is about creating the conditions where you naturally become the match for the life that you want. And once you stabilize in that frequency, even for a few minutes a day over a 40-day period, it becomes very hard for your old patterns to pull you back. You are literally reshaping the inner architecture of your life. So when you think about energetic vortexes now, about devoting yourself and committing to a regular practice for 40 days, the devotion, the consistency, the energetic structure behind it, the way it links to how manifestation actually works, hopefully you can feel why this isn't just a cute number or cute concept, right? There's real substance behind it. There is a rhythm to it, there's a structure to it, there's a reason that it shows up in so many different systems, and it's shown up in so many different systems over thousands of years. And more importantly, there's a reason you feel pulled to this kind of work right now. There is a reason why you are listening to this episode right now. Some of you will be listening as it's coming out, and some of you might be listening 2 years later, whenever this episode finds you. There is a reason why you are feeling pulled right now. It means you are ready for a frequency upgrade, because 40 days is not about being perfect or disciplined in a harsh way or proving anything to yourself. It's about giving yourself the space and the structure to actually become the version of you that you have been trying to grow into. And that is not in theory, right? So many mindset coaches, spiritual coaches, manifestation coaches talk about energy, about frequency, about matching your frequency to the frequency of your desire. But rarely do they truly explain how to do it. It always remains theoretical. And that is the frustration of so many of the students that come to me, because they have been trying to do the work by themselves or with different coaches, and they're like, I just don't get it. And when we dive deep into the work, not in theory, but in their body, in their energy, in their daily life, that is when the magic happens. That is a timeline where their nervous system, their subconscious finally catch up, where their energy stabilizes to the new frequency, and where the new identity actually sticks. And as a result, the external reality finally matches what they have been calling in. And I honestly believe that if more people learned how to work with this, instead of trying to push, hustle, start over every Monday, or hope for a sudden breakthrough, their entire lives would shift. Because as always, nothing is ever truly going to happen from one dramatic moment, right? This is where the work isn't super sexy. We talk about it. Manifestation, reality creation requires devotion. It requires repetition. It requires intention. And you need a container that holds you while you are becoming this new version of you. And that's exactly what we are stepping into together very, very soon. I know I've been hinting about it for a bit now, and it is coming so soon, like literally a few days after this podcast episode goes live. I am bringing you the most incredible experience. It is one that I've been building and embodying behind the scenes. You will hear all about it on Monday, the 17th of November, 2025, if you are listening in real time. I will also talk about it more in the next podcast episode after the announcement is out and enrollment is open. It is going to take you through a 40-day energetic vortex with the flow of Kabbalistic manifestation. And as I mentioned last week, this experience is going to be something that is going to be available financially for everybody. It is not going to be a huge investment, because I want to see as many people as possible go through this shift. See how easy it is to elevate your frequency when you are fully devoted and fully committed. I don't want finances to be a barrier to anyone. However, this doesn't mean that it doesn't require work, right? And that it doesn't require devotion. But for now, I just want you to sit with this question. What could your life look like 40 days from today if you chose to show up differently every single day? If you opened your heart every single day, if you actually gave your energy the chance to stabilize at a higher level consistently, because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is so much smaller than you think once you know how to work with it. So thank you all for being here with me today. This was a very high frequency, high level conversation. So if you stay till the end, you are my person, and I invite you personally to join this experience that is coming up. And if this episode sparked something in you, share it on your Instagram stories. Send it to a friend who's in their season of growth. Tag me or DM me on Instagram so I can see what resonated. And as always, I would really appreciate if you take 5 to 10 seconds of your time to rate this podcast at hopefully 5 stars on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you can just take the time to like and subscribe, because these small actions that take 5 to 10 seconds max really help us reach more people and elevate the frequency and the consciousness of more and more people. And keep your eyes open for Monday if you are listening to this in real time. Something big is coming. It is designed to hold you through your next 40 days in the most powerful, grounded, and elevated way. It is designed to make you the one that all the good things happen for. I cannot wait to walk this with you. Thank you all so much for being here. I love you all so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.